Are you concerned about being discriminated against? Listen, I have great news for you. The Federal Age Discrimination in Employment Act of 1967, which was amended in 1986 and most recently in 1991, makes it illegal to discriminate on the basis of age against anyone over the age of 40 years old, which is great news because now we can all feel really confident that age discrimination never happens anymore. I mean, what a relief. Okay, yeah, maybe not. And you know what? Here's a couple more laws that you really need to know about, and then we'll talk about how to handle these types of situations. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 makes it illegal for any employer with more than 15 employees that engages in interstate commerce, and any employment agency for that matter, regardless of size, if they have clients larger than 15 employees that engage in interstate commerce. This act applies directly to them as well. It's illegal for any of them to discriminate against any individual on the basis of that individual's race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. The Americans with Disabilities Act became effective in 1992, which also covers employees with 15 or more employees in all employment agencies. The ADA defines someone as being disabled if they have a physical or mental impairment and a substantial limitation on a major life activity. And from there, the Act gets very specific, and there's multiple exceptions and differences that truly needs to be studied to be understood. For example, if you can't read, well, that's a physical impairment that results in a substantial limitation on a major life activity. But if you can't read because you dropped out of school before you learned how to read, well, then you're not technically impaired, which means you're not disabled. But if you can't read because you have severe dyslexia, well, then you meet both requirements of being both impaired and having a substantial limitation, and you are considered to be disabled. Or for example, if you are currently engaging in the illegal use of drugs, well, then you're not considered to be disabled. But if you're a rehabilitated drug addict, not currently using illegal drugs, or people participating in supervised rehabilitation programs no longer using such drugs, well, you can be considered disabled under the Act and you may not be discriminated against. So if you think you could be considered disabled for any reason, but you're not sure you're covered by the Act, read through the Americans with Disabilities Act, effective as of July 26, 1992, to determine if you are disabled. In my Interview Strategies audio training program, which is called Turning Interviews into Offers Through Advanced Selling Techniques, I have a section on this topic that covers just about all the different types of illegal discrimination that can happen. The laws that can protect you, the questions that are being asked during interviews that are illegal, why they're illegal, how to respond, and I've included that track from my audio program here on this page for free. Now, if you're already a member and you're logged in, you can just click on the link that's here on this page to download that, or you can just listen right where you are. If you're not a member, just fill out the quick form on this page, and I'll send a link to you to get to that track. Now, my goal here in this video section really is just to focus on one type of discrimination, age discrimination. And really, the way you handle this can be applied to the other types of discrimination as well. But my focus here is going to be on age, since that one's the most common of all the questions that I hear at the live job search seminars that I do on a monthly basis in the Chicago area. First, despite the law that was passed, unfortunately, yes, age discrimination is still happening, but truly not as often as you would think. And the reason I mentioned my monthly seminars earlier is because I get into this conversation a lot, and not with people who want to talk about age discrimination with me, but with people who are just presenting their information to me because they're looking for work. But within 2 minutes of meeting them, they bring up the subject of their age into our conversation. They'll say, hi, my name's Joe, I'm a software engineer, and I know what you must be thinking right now. I probably don't have many working years left, but I'm intending on working until I'm 65, so I've got at least 7 more good years to give to a company. I didn't bring up the subject of their age at all, but they're so self-conscious about it, and they're assuming that everyone is discriminating against them because of their age, that they've actually worked it into their introductory speech. From there, the employer only has 2 options. Either A, uncomfortably smile and nod and ignore what you just said because they know that that's an illegal topic for them to talk about, or B, they start talking about the subject of age that you just brought up. So the first step in fighting age discrimination is to not bring the subject up. And I know that it's very easy to do because it seems like, wow, this is a longer job search than I've ever done before. And last time you were looking for a job, it was pretty quick. You send out your resume, you immediately got a job. It's not like that anymore. So you're assuming they're discriminating against your age. And you can't do that. Let's not make that assumption. So let's not bring up the subject of age. So next, we need to start thinking about this from a salesperson's perspective, right? If you needed to sell an idea to someone who you knew was not on board with you from the start, how would you change their mind? Or let me put it another way, if you're not coming from a salesperson's background, let's say you are leading a project at work, for example, and you knew some of the team members were very hesitant about helping out with this project. How do you convince them that this is a good idea? Well, to do that, you need to start thinking from their perspective and identify the potential risks that they perceive to be scary. That's what any good salesperson is going to do. They're going to try to identify what the potential objections are going to be when they go into this sales call. And once you can do that, then you can start to address those risks. So from the employer's perspective, what's the risk in hiring an older person? And we're going to take 3 examples here just to give you an idea of how this works. And I'll throw this out there up front here. My apologies to anybody if I offend you here. My goal is to help you solve this problem, not to be politically correct. So this could come across as fairly blunt and direct. My intention here is not to offend, though. It's purely to help. And I hope you can understand where I'm coming from here. So the first risk that I can think of is the obvious question. How much longer are you planning on working before you retire? That's obviously a concern for a potential employer. Their next concern is that, well, there's a perception of older people that they are set in their ways, right? And they won't adapt to learning a new system. And then the last one that we'll use here is if the company is made up of primarily younger people, well, how are you going to relate with your younger coworkers? And again, I'm not saying that these are good or accurate perceptions, just saying that they are perceptions and these questions are being asked. So now your goal here is to address these perceived risks without shining a spotlight on your age. Whatever you shine your spotlight on is what people are going to look at. So you want to ease the perceived risk without bringing up the subject of your age. For example, instead of saying, I'm planning on working for 5 or 10 more years, try talking about your 5 or 10 year goals, right? My objective is to work at a stable organization like this one where I can achieve my 1 year, my 5 year, and my 10 year goals. Because that's going to lead the conversation towards talking about what those goals are, and right, and what you can contribute to the company. But it's also going to answer the question, how much longer is this person going to be working here before they retire, without shining a spotlight on your age. Does that make sense? The next perceived risk was your adaptability. So instead of saying, even though I'm old, I'm very adaptable in a humorous kind of a way. And believe it or not, people are saying that, thinking that they're funny, but you're drawing attention to your age. So instead of that, just make it a point to talk about specific projects and situations in your work history that required you to be adaptable and react quickly to new environments. If they ask you about a specific example of your work, be sure to add your adaptability into the conversation. Make sure that that's a go-to conversation that you bring up in every interview. The third risk was about how you relate to younger people. And all you need to do here is to be conscious of your energy level. Enthusiasm relates to all ages. Now, if you have examples of how you worked with younger teams, you can try to bring those into the conversation, but that's really tough because now you're directly bringing up the subject of your age, which is not what you want to do here. I recommend just sticking your focus on a strong energy level in the conversation. All right. Now, these are just three examples here. And obviously, there's more perceived risks that you're going to be able to think of than just those potential 3. But this should give you a good idea of how to approach them. And you can do this for any perceived risk that you can be discriminated against. Like, for example, let's say you think you're going to be discriminated against because of how far you live from their office, or if you think they'll be concerned with your gender or your religion or anything really. First, identify the potential risks in hiring you, and then find a way to address those concerns without shining a spotlight on them. Instead, just focus on the positives that you can bring to the table that would mitigate those risks. Discrimination, unfortunately, it does happen, but it doesn't have to be a showstopper. I mean, as the old saying goes, the antidote to ignorance is education. So just show them why your issue really isn't an issue at all. You can do this. The best resource that I can point you to here is the audio track I've made available on this page from my interview training program. If you're logged in as a member, just click on the link on this page right below the video under the timeline. There's no need to fill out the form. The link is right there for you. If you're not a member, you won't see the link, but you can just fill out that form with just your name and your email address. And when you click submit, that track will be sent to you immediately. Now, this audio program that I mentioned from my recruiting company, Drive Staff, is also a great resource if you really want to dive into interview strategies. It's a 4.5-hour course on every aspect of interviewing, and specifically how to sell yourself more effectively in your interviews. And you can see the table of contents here on this page, and it is for sale, but before you buy it, please keep in mind that the information in 49 of the 60 tracks from that program are already included in speedupmyjobsearch.com. So if you're a member, you already have access to most of that information. And I marked which ones are included so you can see them. And if you really want one that's not already included, you can just get whichever tracks you don't have individually. The program costs $29.95 for the whole program. If you're currently a paid member of this site and you're still interested in buying it, there's a link to a coupon below the table of contents, only viewable to paid members. And if you add the program to your cart, then come back to this page and click that link at the bottom before you've purchased it, that will reduce the price to just $8.99. Either way, it's a solid program. I've got lots of testimonials from people who have landed because of the deep dive that program does on interview strategies. If you really want to master the interview process and you don't feel this section covers enough of the topics that you want information on, or you just want something that you can download and keep forever, that would be a worthwhile investment. For this section, it's important you take action here. Put this information to use. One thing I found when it comes to information, especially from this section, is that people tend to nod along and agree and say, yeah, that's a great idea. But then they don't practice it. They don't write down the perceived risks and really practice how they would respond if they got into a situation that they felt they were being discriminated against. And that's a mistake. You know that this stuff is going to come up, and you need to know it from memory. You need to know these responses from memory. You shouldn't even need to think about it. I mean, I don't recall where I heard this quote, but I want to share it with you. It's one of my all-time favorites, and it goes like this. Amateurs practice until they get it right, but professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. If you are interviewing for a job that's going to pay you money, then by definition, you are a professional, and it's time to step up and fill that role. Practice these strategies until you can't get them wrong, until you won't be surprised by an illegal question, and it won't throw you off your game. You'll know how to respond appropriately, and then after you get this position, that's when you can educate this person on what to do a little bit better. Wait a couple of months, solidify your job first, but you can tell them so that they can fix what they're doing. Maybe they just don't know that they're asking illegal questions. Dealing with illegal questions and discrimination is something that it shouldn't happen. But you know what? Since it does, prepare for it. I promise that not everyone you're competing against for these jobs are preparing themselves for situations like this. So by making sure you're ensuring that you're going to be able to land a job faster than them. And these questions don't just come up when you're sitting there in front of the hiring manager one-on-one. Sometimes they happen on the phone, and sometimes they happen at lunchtime interviews, or in video conference interviews, or in panel interviews, which could still throw you. So in the next video, we'll talk about how to approach all of these different types of interviews appropriately so you can be successful. I'll see you there.